Hello there, this is Steve here in Sydney of the Diagnosis website truebluehealer.com, where in just 20 minutes you can get immediate physical evidence of a divine spark activation in yourself, and that will be giving rise to vivid messaging dreams in about a week, 5, 6, 7 days. You'll get physical evidence, physical signals. You'll also get an internal mentoring voice. It's often been called awakening, and you can do it all for free at truebluehealer.com in just 20 minutes by doing the beginner's tour. It's why you don't need religions anymore. In about the last 50 years, there's been a physical intervention to enable physical evidence of God to be readily provable to you for your own personal satisfaction. And that's what you can get at the website truebluehealer.com for free in just 20 minutes. I bring this to your attention because it's particularly relevant in what I'm going to talk about next. I know you're pressed for time and you're accustomed to getting everything in smaller and smaller sound bites, and that's how you like watching YouTube, that sort of thing. And yet the news that you get in videos is often just in the title of the videos, and you seem to be wasting your time watching a full video for 15, 20 minutes when it's all in the title and the rest of it's just filling. But we get this from alternative media, and it's not too bad. Sometimes there's absolute gems amongst it all, and you have to keep discerning, don't you? I want to commend to you a man speaking called Myron Fagan in 1967. He does this is quite a long lecture, but it's well worth listening to. You could do it in 2 sittings, but he's such a good storyteller. It's most engaging, and he's very succinct the way he does it. He obviously has done his homework, and he explains why the deep state, this is in 1967, so he shows considerable foresight and understanding of what was going on then, and how it equally applies to today with Donald Trump in the White House. And Myron Fagan describes something totally opposite to what you hear now. And that is, you probably hear now, you're sick and tired of hearing it from all the left-wing fanatics, that all the world's suffering are caused by white people. All the minerals are ripped out of Africa, and all suffering and slavery and everything that happened today, and all the problems of today are all caused by one white race, you see. You often hear that. Now, totally opposite to that is this wonderful lecture from 1967 by Myron Fagan. And he tells you in some detail, but in a very digestible style, without having to memorise a whole lot of facts. He talks about general tendencies and significant waypoints in the last 300 years in our history, since 1770-something, with Adam Weishaupt, who founded the Illuminati when he was recruited by the Rothschilds to start a worldwide banking takeover of the whole planet, with the ultimate goal of turning planet Earth into a Gulag archipelago. He describes it, without labouring the point in any one particular place, he artfully describes how the Rothschilds, they came to be called the Illuminati, played a role in the French Revolution via Robespierre. You've probably heard of him, one of the villains. Tool of the Rothschilds he was. Napoleon, British Central Bank, World War I, World War II, and he even talks about World War III and what it's going to be. So he does it very well in a very engaging style, and I really can't fault his storytelling style. It's well worth ignoring a bit of alternative news to listen to this solid rendition that will probably fill in some of the little dark spots, the missing bits in your understanding of history in the last couple of 100 years. And it very cogently explains how we got to the mess we're in today, where people are shooting at our politicians, for goodness sake. So this documentary about the deep state and where it was grown from a couple of 100 years ago to where it is now, and how it seems to be on the run, but it certainly isn't beaten yet. And it may be a fight that goes on forever. If you want to brush up on your history, this is the way to do it. And it's about 75 minutes long. And this fellow really knows what he's talking about, and he's got wonderful acoustics. It's either done on a theatre or a radio broadcast or something, but he certainly knows his stuff, and he's a wonderful storyteller, and I commend it to you. Myron Fagan provides a stimulating commentary that's very useful. He talks about the motivation of these people who want to take over the world via banking and forever smashing empires against each other to strengthen their own position while they finance both sides of every conflict. And World War III will be the same as World War II and World War I and the American Civil War. The American Civil War, by the way, had Rothschilds, who were relatives, advising both of the two presidents in the US Civil War. Did you know that? That was a banker's war again. In fact, it's hard to find a war in modern times that has not been brokered by the bankers to their benefit. They forever increase their stranglehold on everybody with their insane fractional lending money system. I'm sure you've heard of that. This man talks about that in sufficient detail for you to join the whole narrative together for 250 years. And it's well worth watching for anyone who's never studied history. One thing I've noticed over the last 50 years is people have stopped learning history even at school. It was tapering off when I learned it. I've always had a consuming interest in history, but it's not in fashion today, and I don't know why, because it always explains how we are, where we are today, how we got this way. And we also know that social justice warriors and left-wing people actually know nothing of history. All they know is about preaching Marxist self-hatred, trying to paint it onto everyone they meet. That's what all the Marxist historians have been doing for the last 100 years, and that's due to the so-called long march through all the institutions of government and academia organised by the Frankfurt Institute, the cultural Marxists. But a couple of things have happened recently where they finally saturated all the institutions, and average conservative people finally got so jack of it that they voted for Donald Trump and they voted for Brexit to get out from under this global plan to turn the whole planet into a concentration camp. Myron Fagan talks about their ultimate motivation, which just seems to be not just a dislike of a few people, not just a dislike of a few ethnic groups, but in fact a consuming hatred of all of humanity. And he says, straight away, it's all written down in the Talmud, and I suspect most of the people viewing this video will know something of the Talmud that I personally characterise it as violent toilet wall hate scribble that you'd find from 10, 12-year-old schoolboys. Yet, strangely, it's revered as a sacred religious textbook. It's been written down since about 800 AD. Previous to that, it was an oral law where rabbis could just make up the law as they spoke, so that whatever I say at the end of this sentence is going to be the law. And that determines outcomes in courts about marriages and divorces in the Jewish community, which is absolutely amazing. But the Talmud will quickly tell you, you've only got to read a few bits of it, that it's toilet wall hate scribble toward all other people. You're a cockroach, you're to be squashed, you're no more than cattle at best. And murdering you is nothing, it's not a crime, not a sin, because you're not human. It actually says that in the Talmud. Myron Fagan goes to pains in this story to point out that one of their great motivations is not just hatred of people generally, but hatred of religions. They want to eliminate all religions, but Christianity is the greatest religion that they hate the most. And they go out of their way to hate that. And it's written up most profoundly and in very colourful language in the Talmud. And it's really nothing but, it's just vile hate speech, really, is the Talmud. And other people have more elegantly put it as saying that there's more wisdom in Aesop's fables than there is in the entire Talmud. And they're just animal stories written by a Greek fellow called Aesop. Myron Fagan talks about in his very succinct 74-minute lecture that the Rothschilds, the Illuminati, the Adam Weishaupt devotees, they have spent decades putting together federal reserves controlling banking systems of various countries, fomenting massive warfare to exhaust people into surrendering into globalist organisations, giving up their national sovereignties in such as the League of Nations, which America very wisely stayed out of. And the League of Nations never had any teeth, it fell to pieces, World War II happened anyway. And he also mentions that Adolf Hitler was financed by two Berlin banks who were Jewish-owned, oddly. And then he talks about the United Nations as just a further extension of the globalist ambitions. He certainly knew his stuff in 1967, and we see it today where the United Nations is trying to extend global control over everybody, and they were totally upset by Brexit and the election of Donald Trump, and they're in some disarray at the moment and rather desperate, and they've sunk to the level of pumping up lone wolf extremists, such as the recent fellow who started shooting Republican politicians on a baseball field. That's how desperate they are, because they can see the end coming, because the roots of the New World Order thing and the control of all our politicians is actually via pedophilia. And he's just arrested another 199 of them, and I think they've been waiting till they get enough evidence to guarantee a prosecution, because if you don't have enough evidence the first time, you can't try them again. I believe there's a double jeopardy rule in most Western countries where you can only be tried for a crime twice. So you've got to get your facts right, and it takes a long time to complete investigations to bring charges to people to guarantee a conviction. But I would say, first of all, they arrested 1,500 earlier around January. Now it's 199. And I would say they're going to have to arrest a whole lot more of them. But this is truly draining the swamp. And I think that's what motivated the fanatical gunman that mowed down the politicians on the baseball field the other day. Why do people take left-wing politics so seriously? It has been suggested it's actually left-wing zeal that they have is more like a replacement for religion. They're very nihilistic and devote their entire life to getting who they want into the White House, when in practice, in reality, it really makes no difference to your personal life on Monday morning. You still have a job to go to, still the same old TV to watch, you've still got the same situation around you. Nothing really changes with who's the president of a country. But the left-wing people are all stricken with militant anger that they just can't stand. They haven't got their own team member in the White House. It's been suggested that these people are devoid of life, and their left-wing obsessiveness is simply an expression of their natural religious tendencies, which is a mistake made by Weishaupt and the Rothschilds way back in the 1770s. They wanted to get rid of Catholicism and all the religions and Islam, the whole lot. But the truth is you'll never get rid of people's natural religious tendencies. They're in our DNA, and it's a lesson they don't understand yet. And you really don't need any of those organised religions. They're just parasiting off your personal religious tendencies, which are in your DNA. And you can now get physical proof that I just mentioned at the beginning of this little chat video. Layman's Gnosis 20 minutes, truebluehealer.com, physical evidence of your divine spark activation, and you can blow a raspberry at the organised religions if you'd like to. And that's why I don't think the Illuminati are ever going to succeed in replacing all the religions. It's just not going to happen. Because now there's physical evidence of the divine spark. That's a living God in everybody. It's waiting for you to acknowledge the fact that you want to know about it. Okay? So So it's worth having a look at the Myron Fagan 1967 lecture on how the banking system has been used for the last 250 odd years to and a slow motion coup to take over the world and turn the whole planet into a global gulag archipelago, a concentration camp for your children, your grandchildren and all your descendants. And that's what Agenda 21 and Agenda 30 is of the United Nations. So it's very good at filling in any gaps in your understanding of history. It'll give you a very good and widespread and comprehensive general knowledge and the absolute importance of things like Brexit and Donald Trump succeeding. Okay, I'll leave you at that.